Hello and welcome to another Kast special, where the jokes are as bad as the games.
Hey everyone, it's Valkyrie here. Welcome to Concast number, I don't even know what number we're on anymore, so forget it. But this week we have our Heavy Gear Assault developers on again today. We're bringing back John Nguyen, who is here again after being on the initial interview. John?
Yeah, how's it going? Nice to be back.
And we've also got Vince McMullin, who I believe is the vice president of MekTek. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I'm actually the president.
Oh, you're actually the full president. Okay.
Yes, president and producer of.
Not just the Vince president, as
no,
we were
not
saying
just
earlier.
the Vince president.
Well, he is the Vince president.
All right.
President Vince.
So talking about Heavy Gear Assault today, Vince, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you do with MekTek?
Absolutely. So I'm the actual founder of MekTek. Founded MekTek back many years ago now. I'm a big Mech fan, playing MechWarrior for many years, many other Stompy Robot games. My role on the team is essentially I'm the producer, and I'm also the president, so I handle all the fun business side of the business as well, along with my colleague and co-founder James Taylor, who is actually the president of Stompybot Productions as well.
I believe we were supposed to have James here today, but I don't believe he was able to make it. So Vince, you say you founded MekTek. If memory serves me right, back in the early 2000s or so during MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries run. Is that correct?
Well, actually, MekTek got started before MechWarrior 4. MekTek got started during the MechWarrior 3 days. I was basically very involved in the MechWarrior community. I ran a clan called the Korean Empire. I also was a league administrator for the Battlezone League. I also worked on the Star League as well. I was really immersed in the entire community at the time, and I was also a bit of a game hacker, kind of the good kind. I used to do things like, mods for various games like Quake and Doom, and I've been modding games since the early 90s. And I started getting really ticked off over hackers in MechWarrior 3, and I got together with a really, really genius programmer's online handle was Zorglub, and we put together a cheat detector for MechWarrior 3. And that's kind of where I really got started, was with preventing hacking, and then we started modding the game, working with VMAX, who worked on the MechWarrior 2 Nirvana stuff. Like, we did map editors and texture editors and cheat detectors, and we did a whole host of things for the MechWarrior 3 community. And through that, I ended up being involved in the beta testing program for MechWarrior 4, and I was involved with that game for many years, as you guys know. And we started doing the MechPaks in around 2002, I guess it was. And we were working with Fast Interactive, and they couldn't believe it when they saw that we had the Warhammer in the game. They were blown away because it was something that they wanted to do, but of course, due to licensing with Harmony Gold, they never could. And we were showing them the Marauder, and we were showing them the Rifleman. We were doing all this great stuff with the game at the time, and they basically came back and said, "Hey, maybe you guys might be interested in doing an expansion for the game." And it could have turned into a full-on commercial expansion pack for the game, but we were kids at the time. Like myself and James, we were still in high school, and they were sending us all these legal documents and stuff like that. And so finally we just said, we're a little bit nervous. And, we said, we just want to do this as a community thing. We want to do this as, we're fans, we're kids. We just want to have some fun. And so Microsoft came back with, an agreement with us that we were allowed to pretty much do whatever we want, so long as we didn't supply things like, no CD patch and stuff like that. So we went ahead and we produced 3 expansion packs underneath that license. Supported the game when Microsoft decided to pull the plug on the Internet Gaming Zone. We put together MechMatch, and that was a very interesting piece of reverse engineer technology, I have to say. We never got any help from Microsoft on any of this stuff. We never had source code or anything. We were down to basically working with the assembly, the game executable, to pull the stuff off, and we were supporting the community. And we had members of the community that at that time were yelling at us, that we weren't supporting them, and blah blah blah. Same thing that we're putting up with right now. Um, and at the end of the day, we were the only ones out there, aggressively and actively supporting the franchise for about 5 years. So, I think we've kind of earned our keep, with the mech fans. There's a few out there that, usually parade around the forums and say that, we did this and that to their game and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff had to happen to keep it alive. So I don't really feel too bad about it. I was just going to say, like right now where we're at with MekTek and things is that basically, we've decided that, we're really in kind of a transition zone with MekTek becoming a commercial studio. We started in around 2006, looking at trying to take the studio, take it off the ground, turn our mod team into more of a commercial success. We're really grassroots. We're not spending money on, expensive sports cars and, expensive offices and stuff like that. We're spending money on
Vegas.
things like, yeah, trip to Vegas. That's in the cards. We're really about the game and supporting the game fans and producing something that'll last for the next decade on a technology stack that will be around in the next hopefully the next 5 to 10 years. We're not really interested in trying to support the MechWarrior 4 community because, well, quite frankly, it's built on an older technology stack. There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of engineering that needs to be done, and we can't commercialize it. So we can never come up with the kind of money we need to be able to, unfortunately, do those types of upgrades and bring that game up to spec. And on the flip side, we also want the fans of that franchise to support MechWarrior Online and support the BattleTech franchise. Because if they don't put the money into that franchise, then that franchise will die out. So we're going with Heavy Gear. Heavy Gear hasn't really had any real attention in the last decade. Activision and Sony sat on the licensing for almost a decade now, and we basically want to bring back Heavy Gear, and we want to bring it to the next generation of gamers. We're really looking forward to seeing what people think of what we've done with the franchise. We're focusing on a very competitive esports type of environment with Heavy Gear, and I'm really excited because we're bringing back a faster-paced gameplay style. Mech games in North America have sort of slowed down quite a bit over the last couple of years. My favorite mech game is MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries. Just putting it out there. We want a really fast-paced gameplay style where you can kind of come off a ramp and you can hit your directional jets and spin around, and you can go ahead and have full control of your movement in space. Focusing on things like vertical gameplay style, having players be able to move up and down a map very easily, very quickly. I'm sure you guys know that there was a TV show for Heavy Gear focused on the arena aspect of the IP, which is something that is incorporated in what we're developing right now, but it's not entirely arena, and it's really sort of troubling because a lot of people think that we're right now doing this MOBA type game, which it really is a MOBA. What we're really doing with this game is we're really focusing on all the different aspects of Heavy Gear and bringing those together in a really tight multiplayer atmosphere. We wanted to make sure that the gameplay was really solid. We knew that we wouldn't have the budget to be able to do a $10 million single player campaign. So we decided, let's go ahead and shrink the cost down. Let's do a really solid, fun gameplay that we know that we can get people hooked and playing, and then expand from there. So that was always the goal with this thing, was to do something that's really tight and expand from it.
Thanks for the background there. I completely understand what you mean as far as supporting MechWarrior 4. I mean, as fun as I had, as much fun as I had with it back in was it middle school almost. I mean, the game is over a decade old at this point, and as cool as it was to continuously see new mechs and whatnot coming out for it while you guys are still working on the MechPaks. At a certain point, all good things do come to an end, unless you're IL2 1946, which is still getting patches, but that takes a lot of dedication. So I know, Connor, you had a question as well?
Not really a question, more of a statement. I don't think you guys have any trouble getting your foot in the door with the community on mechs. What you guys did with MechWarrior 4 when you released them all in one big thing, that was a huge deal. Everyone talked about that. Everyone was very excited for when MekTek had MechWarrior 4 with all the expansions, the Inner Sphere and the clan packs, and it was still up for download for free. When that happened...
And let me jump in here and just say, however you guys managed to get that free download distribution from Microsoft for the entirety of MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries, I will love you guys forever for that, simply because I remember as a kid going into GameStop all the time and looking for that damn clan mech pack because I wanted to drive the Basakari or the Warhawk and, clanner speak, and I could never find the damn thing, and then you had the free release, and oh look, it's got all the mechs from the MechPaks and the MekTek Background and the actual game too, which is really great. And go ahead, Connor.
Yeah, so I don't think you guys have any problem earning any trust right now. As we discussed even before this whole thing, a lot of people are just burned out, and they're really jaded, especially with the way industry's been lately. So I really hope that you can get the people to notice whatever you got coming up, because I think it really needs to be made. I think you guys have the tools and the talent. You just need whatever it is to get your foot in the door on this project.
I personally think what they need more than anything right now is just word of mouth, because I mean it's a great concept, and everything we talked about last time, we were all really excited just hearing about the neat things we're hoping to see from Heavy Gear Assault. And frankly, I think giant robots are back. I mean, I went to go see Pacific Rim on Thursday night, and it was a full house, and that's all I've heard about all week long is, Pacific Rim. And, the toys are flying off the shelves, and Guillermo del Toro is talking about doing a full game now, not just the little downloadable thing. And then you got, the MechWarrior stuff coming back. We've got Hawken back. And, even though some people are obviously burning out on MechWarrior and Hawken at this point, I think it's safe to say that, the giant robot genre might have its day again here in the States and in the West in general, and that's a good thing.
Well, it's already echoing in. I mean, just look at Transformers. It keeps still, they still keep playing those movies.
Well, that's because it's a Michael Bay movie. Michael Bay could make a movie about him making dinner, and there'd be enough explosions in it to make $100 million off of it. Anyhow, moving on. So, Vince, John, I did want to ask you guys about the Kickstarter. As we all know, unfortunately, the Kickstarter didn't really meet its goals. Mm-hmm. And so I just wanted to, just get your take on basically what you think happened with the Kickstarter and where you guys plan to go from here.
Well, basically, what we thought would happen to Kickstarter, we took it the feedback we got, we analyzed a lot of it, and it seems like unfortunately the community's been burned. Backlash that we got out of it simply because we're making another mech game. That being said, though, we are continuing with our project, and hopefully the community will see that what we're trying to do is actually trying to put something new and fresh out for the genre and for the mech gaming community as a whole.
I'll just jump in here. One of the things that I think we could have done better with the Kickstarter is that we could have put out some gameplay, more gameplay footage. It seemed to be the sticking point for us, and one of the challenges that I was faced with, and you guys are familiar with. This process because you've seen it with the other guys in the industry. I really wonder if we if we would have benefited from it, but I think we would have more gameplay footage. One of the things that it seemed like to me people were not fully understanding what type of game this was. I fielded many questions on Kickstarter from our Kickstarter backers about what type of game we're building, despite the fact that we had this awesome Pax and Arms trailer and subsequent Gear Bay trailer that we put up, people were still asking about what type of game it was, and entering into those conversations, I sort of realized that a lot of people would have been happy, with us just showing some gray box demonstration of gameplay. So, that's one of my criticisms of our campaign was that we never had that. But as John said, it was pretty clear entering into the campaign that we weren't going to hit our tipping point. We just had that feeling within the first couple of hours because we were seeing so many other comments about other free-to-play games, and one of the things that sort of bugged me about it was, people sort of associated free-to-play with free-to-build. So, a lot of people had mentioned, well, I'll just wait till the game comes out, and if I like it, I'll.
Right. Yeah. And to be totally honest, I mean, I kind of think I understood what you guys were going for going into our initial interview that we had with John last month. But I think the biggest issue was I just didn't quite understand the scope of what was being attempted here. I mean, I like my arena mech games. I'm a big Armored Core fan. The first thing I always gravitate to in Armored Core is I start grinding arena matches like it's going out of style because that gets me points. It's a lot of fun just to go one-on-one sort of thing. And I think that's kind of what I was under the impression Heavy Gear Assault was right up until we had the interview, and then you guys kind of elaborated on it and talked about different game modes and the other things y'all want to do with the actual arena concept, and that's when it kind of clicked with me, and I think that's what basically sold me on the concept.
Well, we're just working on game modes today, actually. We've got a lot of great ideas in terms of game modes, and the more I talk to people about what we're building here, the more everybody gets really excited about it, and that's what gets me up in the morning. Is the fact that we can excite people about what we're building here, and that's the positive point of Kickstarter. Kickstarter might not have passed and everything, but we actually had a great time getting people excited that actually took a look at what we were doing, and sitting down and explaining it to people. It was a great experience, especially when you got that great positive feedback about what it is that you're doing. It was a great experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but if I were you, I would probably have a little counter on my desk that said, so many days until rocket jousting. That would be my great end goal right there.
Well, let me tell you.
We really made an impression on you with the rocket jousting, didn't we?
Well, let me tell you. If you're talking
to somebody, you're talking to somebody who spent God knows how many hours in middle school playing Halo with his friends, and all we would do was get in warthogs and just scream across blood gulch until we hit each other, and then get out and try to run the other guy over. So when you told me rocket jousting, that was it. Game over.
Done.
Let me tell you about a game mode that we're working on right now. So here we are, basically saying, well, how can we make this as high stakes as possible? Okay. And we came up with a game mode that I actually presented this at GDC to a core group of Heavy Gear 2 players, old Heavy Gear 2 players. They went nuts. I got this idea from the MechWarrior 4 players. So, of course, everybody knows the Irby races. Do you guys know the Irby races? We come up with this idea. Before. So we basically, a bunch of guys get together in urban mechs and race around in Coliseum. Wildly popular. A lot of people love playing that way. So I come up with this idea. Okay, we get these arenas that the really fast gameplay style. Part of the IP has racing in it. The TV series had racing in it. Race around these junkyard type arenas. They're open, by the way. There's no stadium or anything like that. It's an open environment, except you've got spectators. We went ahead and sat down and said, what would be really awesome? What if we could play for pinks? Do you guys know where pink slips are? Pink slip is something that comes with your car. It has all your information on it. It shows that you actually own your car. So we get this idea. What if players could go ahead and when they're in the lounge and they're deciding whether they're going to go into a match to play in a tournament game, they can go ahead and put their put their gear on the line. So if you get two hotshot pilots and they're like, yeah, you know what, I kick your ass. Nah, man, I'm going to totally wipe your ass on the floor. Yeah, let's go. You can go ahead and say, you know what, if I win, I get your gear. So you hop in the match, and yeah, winner takes all. We got that idea from, first of all, you guys mentioned Fast and Furious while we were talking before. We got that idea from, we think that guys that like playing racing games will love that. We know the mech game nerds love playing Irby races. I even seen it being played on the Tesla pods, virtual entertainment Tesla pods. We really think that that's something that's been missing from mech games, and being able to pull it all on the line like that. If you're a really competitive player, yeah, guess what? I remember when I used to play mech all the time, I would love the game mode like that. I would have been totally doing that all the time. I would have had so many fucking mechs, it would have been entirely, I would have owned the game.
Connor, you had a question?
Could we possibly shoot each other during this?
Oh, road rash with mechs. Yeah, that'd be nice.
And then there's that risk because you're shooting your money away. You destroy that mech, your income's not going to be any good.
I won this mech, but it's a giant piece of crap, and I got to patch up like half the damn thing.
Because I shot the shit out of it. Oh well, salvage.
Risk
reward. Risk reward. Do I shoot back, or do I just sort of dodge and go faster?
And see, this is just kind of running off of this. I really do think this is really what sold me, obviously, on the concept for Heavy Gear Assault, and I'm wondering if are you guys planning to do a second Kickstarter, and if you are you going to put a little bit more emphasis on things like this? Because, like I said, when I first heard it, I just thought arena robots fighting, and while that's really cool to me, I'm a mech head. I love that stuff regardless. For other people who aren't necessarily into mechs, it's going to be stuff like, in my opinion, it's going to be stuff like the rocket jousting and the, Irby races, so to speak, since we don't have really a better name for it at the moment that's going to sell them on it. That would just be my thought, anyhow.
Well, right now it's still a little too early to say if we're going to go for the second Kickstarter. Right now we're still analyzing the aftermath of the first Kickstarter, and we're still doing postmortems on it, and still trying to learn what we could have done better, what went wrong, what went right, and basically see what else we can possibly present that would have presented a better case for Heavy Gear Assault that maybe we didn't get right the first time on our first Kickstarter. So right now it's still a little too early to tell. We're still going through the data and seeing what else we can do.
Well, definitely keep us posted. Like I said, that would have sold me on it if I had gone in knowing nothing, and I think that for a lot of folks here, that was what kind of turned the tide on our jaded hearts, so to speak. Now, also going off of the Kickstarter thing, I know something that I heard from quite a few people, including a friend of mine who works for DreamPod 9, was that people were saying that they wanted to see single-player Heavy Gear stuff.
Yes.
And I know you guys mentioned that y'all wanted to do some single-player stuff. Obviously, if you're planning to do a multiplayer game first, it allows you to get a lot of the balance stuff worked out. And it doesn't require as much of an initial investment, simply because obviously if you're doing a single-player game, it's going to cost a fair bit more, and there's not necessarily as much impetus for somebody to actually go and continue to invest money in that as there would be with a free-to-play game. And so I'm just curious, as far as the single-player stuff goes, would y'all mind elaborating a little bit on that? Like I said, this is something that I hear a lot of people talking about. I know Vasago was talking about how much he wanted to see a single-player Heavy Gear game. And even today, we have all these giant robot games coming out again, but so many of them are all multiplayer focused. And I'm thinking that in an era where it's all multiplayer, maybe that single-player kick is really what's going to be a selling point for other people.
Well, Val, let me jump in here. The first point I'd like to make is single player is costly, very costly. We have a single player budget put together. We know that it's going to be very tough in terms of the working budget that we have to do a full single player campaign. It's almost impossible.
Right. Yeah. And like I said,
the numbers. The numbers are very. I've tried to explain to people the numbers. The math is very simple. The number that we were asking for in Kickstarter, when you divide it up amongst 30 developers working on the project, and then you account for servers and server licenses and stuff like that, we're looking at about $25,000 per developer for the year. Okay. Now you know like that is actually just a shade above social assistance.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about guys with student loans, professionals that were in the industry. We're talking
Hmm.
about industry veterans. We're talking about all of these guys on our team are, willing to do this project for very small means because they all believe in Stompy robots. But the problem is that when you throw a single player campaign on top of that, well, that's really just going to break the camel's back before we even get started. And I'm really hesitant to even want to commit to it with the funding because it's going to take over the project. And we're already seeing ripple effects on Kickstarter projects that have succeeded where they've run out of funding. I'm sure you guys know about the Double Fine story.
Right.
Where they've made these big promises and now they can't keep them, and they're pushing timelines back a year or more because realistically, even with the amount of money that they got, the things that they promised people take a lot of time and money. A single player campaign requires voice actors, and it requires, a digital set, if you will, that you don't need for a multiplayer game. You don't need all of these, expensive pieces to do a good multiplayer game. And I think that's why you're seeing studios with smaller budgets that are doing AAA games, just doing multiplayer games. It makes a lot of sense in terms of what's happening in the industry right now. I mean, it's really hard to compete against the $60 million Call of Duty single player campaign. The expectation of the gamers are that they're going to get something like that for single player. Unfortunately, it's hard to compete with something like that when you're getting started. So that's why we took the episodic approach when we started being approached by Heavy Gear fans, and the reason why we went with the episodic approach, that was actually in the plans before we announced it. We had that sort of figured out going in the Kickstarter that if people, they come in and they request single player, we can go ahead and put this plan down. And we've got some really great stories written. The idea behind the episodic approach is it's from the pilot's eyes that are actually the duelists in the arena setting. And so they're sitting around, a campfire or a table in a bar, and they're telling the story. And then you sort of have the flashback moment where you're actually them playing in that, that war zone. And that allows us to be able to jump back and forth through the Heavy Gear timeline to sort of these some really exciting wars that took place and, tell the story of these pilots, these duelists that are now in the more competitive sporting environment. Does that make sense? That's essentially. I hope you guys understand. That's our approach with the episodes.
That does make a lot of sense too, and I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from as far as the cost efficiency standpoint of making single player content. I mean, as we see with a lot of other developers, it's very easy to put together a working multiplayer game and have a store, especially if you're a free to play game, have a store where you can buy things and that just goes directly back into development. Or even if you're a big company like say Dice, with your big studio with like Dice, where you've got a huge multiplayer game that costs you millions of dollars to make, but you can continue to fund that game and further projects by, offering DLC, MekPaks, skins,
Exactly.
new things like that.
Yeah.
And so I kind of see where you're coming from, as far as saying that it's better to make a multiplayer game from the start. That way you can kind of get an income, get an income flow going. But I do like, the concept of the episodic approach. Especially if it turns out to be something very similar to a multiplayer funding system where you buy the first episode or two and that funds the next episode and that funds the next one and so on and so forth.
And that was our approach for the Kickstarter. I mean, that really is something that I think the fans really responded well to during our campaign, and it's something that we're going to continue to pursue during the development of Heavy Gear because it's clear and obvious that people do really want to have a single player component to this, and it also differentiates us from the market as well. Having this ability to be able to demonstrate that we have both single player and offline mode, if you will, as well as the ability to be able to play multiplayer. Allows us to reach a wider audience, players that may not necessarily. One of the things that I'm thinking about, of course, is that MekTek's actually had a lot of support from the U.S. military in the past. There's been a number of times where we've been contacted by, some of the veterans, as well as the active guys in the field, in Iraq and Afghanistan and whatnot. And they've contacted us, and they told us that they were playing MechWarrior 4 Mercenaries and the MekPaks, in their local lands and stuff like that overseas, and it just really, really, it just left a really good feeling in my heart to think that, we were giving these guys something really awesome to play. And what I'd love to do is to have that ability, that ability to be able to go off the grid and allow players that aren't interested in playing in the tournaments, to actually allow them to be able to play against each other in more of these call them LAN type settings, where you can get a group of guys together and just have a game amongst yourselves. And that's another thing that's really missing from the free to play games out there right now is players are basically they have to work with the matchmaking system that is given to them, and they're not allowed to matchmake themselves at all. And it's really restrictive, and it's something that I'd like to move away from a little bit with Heavy Gear, because I don't enjoy it as a player very much, and I know a lot of other mech players do not enjoy it as much either. So that's been my approach with this project so far, is to give the players choice and allow them to be able to choose how they play.
I really I could not agree with you more there. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I think that I enjoy single-player mech games a little bit more than multiplayer. No offense to my fellow Kong members. But I think that if I had the option of going into MechWarrior Online and going, well, I can, play online with people, or I can blow $10-15 on an hour and a half long episode, for a single player game that might have a little bit of an offline component that I can kind of mess around with my mech in against bots. I'd probably continue to buy those single player components over anything else that I could buy, like new mech bays or paints or other cosmetic stuff like that. But that's just my opinion on it. And I know I've seen this come up too with From Software, where I think one of the biggest slights against Armored Core 5 was the fact that the single-player campaign was just kind of crap, and the multiplayer was the real meat of the game, and a lot of people didn't really like that. And so my understanding is that Armored Core Verdict Day is supposed to have a much more substantial campaign to get that single-player audience back in there. So I think you guys are definitely on the right track there. Now, moving on again, I understand that you guys are using Unreal 4 for Heavy Gear. Do y'all mind explaining why y'all decided to go with Unreal 4 as opposed to some other engine alternatives that are out there?
Well, sure. We decided to go with Unreal Engine 4. We actually have an Unreal Engine 3 license as well. We've been working with Unreal technology now for a number of years. We actually started out developing with Unreal, I guess now it's about 3 or 4 years ago. In general, Unreal Engine 4 is an amazing piece of software. It's really truly next generation. It's going to be a game engine that's going to be around for a number of years. They're basically building it for the consoles, mobile, PC. It's cross-platform. It's going to have Mac support. It's going to have basically all the tools are there for us to in 2 or 3 years' time, feel very comfortable to put together, more games in the Heavy Gear franchise, as well as other titles. The choice of the engine, basically, we were looking at the CryEngine and we were looking at Unreal Engine and looking at what are our options in terms of development, and we decided to go with Unreal Engine 4 because it looks to us to be a better product overall. There's more tools. It's easier to use. It's more familiar to students and grad students and younger professionals. There's entire courses that are taught using the UDK, for instance. The technology stack is very stable. Certainly, there's a lot of Unreal Engine 3 foundation in Unreal Engine 4. Has a deferred rendering system. It basically has the best physics system out there as far as I'm concerned. It allows us to do a simulator type game like this quite nicely. So
Now, as far as the Unreal stuff goes, I mean, that's I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'm not a developer, so a lot of that stuff is just kind of going over my head. But it definitely sounds like you guys made the right call on using UE4, especially with Mac support. I know Laser does a lot of his work on Mac, and so that'll be really helpful for him to actually be able to play games on multiple PCs instead of just the one. But on that note, do y'all have any plans for, say, Linux support or anything like that? I know Gabe's making a big push for Valve to be Linux compatible with a lot of things, and I do think that's going to end up being a pretty major operating system to have support for in the future.
Well, Valk, actually, that's something we talked about during our Kickstarter. The great thing about Unreal Engine 4 is that their technology stack is going to include a lot of support for OpenGL, and we're looking at piggybacking on top of that. One of the things that we're looking at, of course, is the dedicated server technology, allowing these dedicated server admins that are very serious server admins to host dedicated servers on Linux. Honestly, like who's serious and hosts a server on Windows? I mean, that seems like nonsense to me. Linux is just not really nice platform for an operating system to support dedicated multiplayer servers. We're also, of course, looking at actually providing the full game on Linux. Right now, our focus is on the Ubuntu platform because that essentially, has the bulk of the Linux users. But Linux users generally are very adaptable, and they can bring technologies into their flavor, their favorite distribution pretty easily. So we're going to try our very best to support as much as possible. You can run, OpenGL 4.0, or you have a, DirectX 11 capable video card. You should be able to have no problems playing the game on Linux.
Sounds good. So regarding the community, obviously community is going to be a huge thing moving forward. It is for any game, really, especially.
It is for anything,
an
basically.
Game. Yeah, if you don't have a community, you don't have an audience to buy your product. You don't have a product, you don't have a company. You don't have anything really. So I'm curious to know what do y'all guys have planned as far as getting the word out for Heavy Gear Assault. I know we've been seeing a lot of folks coming in and having a look at the first interview that we did, but I'm curious to see what you guys have down as far as, I guess, social media strategy and kind of helping to build a community beyond just the people who were following MekTek for the MechWarrior 4 days and the Heavy Gear franchise as a whole. Obviously, you're trying to reach out past that because let's be perfectly honest here, it's kind of a smaller audience, all things considered. So I'd like to see what y'all's plans are for helping to grow your community.
Well, we were kind of really fortunate to begin because we actually have a community fan base to begin with when we started the Heavy Gear Assault project. The Heavy Gear Assault project, we had, like you already mentioned, MekTek community that's following what MekTek was doing in regards to the MechWarrior franchise, and we also had DreamPod 9's community with Heavy Gear and Heavy Gear fans, as well as that might be a small community, but it is a very vocal and active community that came together. So we had those to build on when we started out our project. And moving forward, obviously, we want to reach the mainstream video game crowd. We want to reach out to people who play other mech games. We want to reach out to people who may not have ever heard of MekTek Studios and what they've done for MechWarrior. We want to reach out to people who may even play different genres altogether and who don't remember the golden age of Stompy robots in the late 90s and early 2000s. Who grew up with COD and just showed them what else is out there and what else was in the video game history. So Our strategy is basically to reach out to some of these younger community as well to carry on the torch, and also to reach out to the older guys who maybe because of XYZ reasons have unhooked themselves from the video gaming world and just get them back into the fold.
Well, I was gonna say, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, this is pretty much the big shot for giant robot games to come back, especially with Respawn pushing Titanfall now. That was the big draw at E3, from what I understood, was everyone was looking at Titanfall and to a lesser extent, or maybe even an equal extent, Watch Dogs and what was it, I can't remember what the name was. That new Tom Clancy's game, the one I'm looking forward to, but for whatever godforsaken reason, I can't remember the name of. But with stuff like Titanfall coming out, and considering that the talent that was behind that studio, I can see it definitely becoming a big thing in the future. And so, I mean, I think the time is now. To be perfectly honest with you, you had something else you wanted to say?
No.
Oh.
well, Valk, I couldn't believe I couldn't believe when I seen Titanfall, to be honest, because there were a number of elements in Titanfall that we've been putting in the heavy gear assault. So, in that respect, I thought that we're definitely on to something here. Seeing that this was what Respawn has picked as being the next big thing. The great thing about the difference between the two games is that it seems like their focus is on the pilots, while our focus is on the mechs, and you're going to see that more and more as you see more information come out about the two products. They've got a lot of money to throw at what they're doing. They've got EA and Microsoft behind them, and they were very successful in their own right. What they did with Call of Duty, and they're using the Source engine, which they're very familiar with, and they probably already had a lot of in-house tools and stuff like that to work with. I can respect their decisions totally with how they're going about this project. But at the same time, I mean, here we are with a completely new engine. Unreal Engine 4 doesn't have all the things that the Unreal Development Kit has in it. It basically, when we went to GDC, we showed a multiplayer demo with some mechs, moving around and firing at each other, and it looked like a basic version of Unreal Development Kit. But the fact remained at the time that we never had any of that. There was none of that gameplay functionality in Unreal Engine 4. In fact, right now there's not as much in it. To this day, they still haven't really focused on the game framework or anything like that. It's mostly been focused on graphics. So we felt that it was actually an innovative achievement, and we get kudos from Epic Games at GDC for what we were able to do with their technology, because right now they've been more focused on the cinematic side of things. But it wasn't really what we wanted to show, to show the public. In terms of gameplay, it's not a vertical slice. It's not what we're shooting for in terms of gameplay. It was essentially to us, over the course of a very short development period, 3 months, we managed to get together, a fully functional prototype to take to GDC with some cool graphics, show people. So. I'm looking at the Titanfall demo that was released at E3, and I can tell you that there was a lot of time and energy put into releasing that gameplay footage, and it's going to be very interesting to see how much money they spend in marketing to reach people. It's really great when we've got this product, and we've got movies out there like Pacific Rim. And other games and other video games with big stompy mechs, it's driving this genre's interest and exposure like nothing I've seen in the last decade. And this is the Titanfall game is going to be an OEM game. It's going to be shipping on Xbox One. I'm sure you're going to see it in package deals and stuff like that. It's going to be sitting on everybody's shelf that buys an Xbox One. And once people are done playing that game, well, they're going to be looking for other games out there to play that they might be able to more get that simulator experience in. Hopefully, Heavy Gear Assault is going to be that game.
Yeah, and I do recall, I can't remember who was it they interviewed, but it was either It was either West or Zampella who said something to the tune of they're trying to distance themselves from the old MechWarrior games and Heavy Gear and that type of thing. They're trying to make it their own thing, but at the same time, there's going to be those obvious parallels being drawn between Titanfall and other games with giant robots. Because it's kind of an obvious connection to make.
Well, it is. And when I saw that the pilots have rocket packs, I immediately thought of Mech Assault.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought of too. Mech Assault 2. I was like, oh boy, here we go with the neurojacking stuff.
And that game was kind of a nightmare. To me, that if that game wouldn't have had that aspect to it, it would have been a much more fun experience. So, if you have a little man on top of your 100-ton mech trying to cut the top of the head off it to get at you, that's just it's sort of like an elephant dealing with a wasp, right? Like, how does he deal with that?
Stop, drop, and roll would have been my first thought, but
Kill it with fire. Nuke it from orbit too.
Now, going back to one other thing you were saying, too, you mentioned a vertical slice. Now, I know what a vertical slice is, but for those of us, in the audience who are not, or, not those of us, but other people who are in the audience who are not typically familiar with that terminology, would you mind explaining to us basically what a vertical slice is, and do you think we'll be seeing one for Heavy Gear Assault in the future?
Okay, well, basically, a vertical slice is basically a milestone or a benchmark that's used to demonstrate progress in a video game. So what we're doing right now is our vertical slice is the gameplay functionality that we would expect to have in the alpha. That's part of our vertical slice, so that's the development aspect. Then we're also looking at the environment, so like one completed map that would be part of that slice, as well as a few gears for players to play with. And so those sort of three things come together to become the vertical slice.
And when do you think we might be seeing one of those for Heavy Gear Assault? Are you guys working on one right now, I take, or are you just building everything up as it comes along?
Well, right now we've been working towards getting to that vertical slice since the last. Well, let's say since GDC. We're still trying to get out of the prototyping stage. Certainly, Kickstarter threw a few wrenches at us. We didn't expect some of the things that fans wanted from this game, and we're taking a serious look at everything the community has presented to us and making a decision about whether we're going to sort of shift focus on terms of what we want in our vertical slice. It's very important for us to reach this. This is a huge milestone for any video game production. Once you reach that slice, you're on the home road to getting your alpha out and be tested amongst a private alpha testing team and stuff like that. But we're basically shooting to have it by September at the moment.
Sounds good, and I do look forward to seeing that too. I think that for those who are still on the fence as far as whether or not they want to, pledge to the game, I think that'll really kick it in overdrive. Might even, earn you guys an angel investor or two, I think that's the term that they're using these days for the large scale investors on, these crowdfunding games. So one last thing I wanted to ask about community stuff. Community input. I'm curious to know, how are you guys planning to kind of work that into the game? Obviously, you kind of have to listen to your fans and find out what they want in the games, but I can tell you as an Ace Combat fan, doesn't always work out the way that everyone expected it to, and sometimes fans have really bad ideas that should come nowhere even remotely close to paper to be integrated into the game. And on the flip side, you've also got really good ideas where they'll be looked at and immediately tossed aside. So I'm kind of curious, how are you guys planning to handle community input to the game as far as how it influences development and balance and whatnot?
Okay. I'm good. I've got an approach to this. And I'm sure John's got an approach as well. So.
Well, we got a few anecdotes that we did during our Kickstarter campaign where we actually took in community input and actually took it into consideration and discussed it internally before actually hashing something out to the public. But yeah, go ahead, Vince.
Well, first of all, we found that we had a great deal of value and feedback during the Kickstarter campaign. We found that people provided us with some extremely useful information that, like it's kind of been the theme of this talk so far. Um, is that Kickstarter was a very positive experience for us. We didn't get kickstarted, but the amount of information that we generated from that campaign is worth gold to us essentially. But in terms of how the game plays, so in terms of I'm not sure if I'm going to answer your question directly or indirectly at this point, but I'm going to take you through how players are going to be playing this game. When you launch the game, you hit the menu, of course, and so you hit the multiplayer button, and that takes you to the lounge area. So as a player, you're in the lounge area. Now, we might have to pull back a little bit because of funding restraints. So originally we were thinking about actually having the ability for players to be able to come in and dress up their pilots, change their helmets, their clothes, that type of thing, customize their pilots, have a male and female, number of different races, have a Grell, basically all these guys are hanging out in the pilot's lounge, and when you go ahead and enter into a lobby area in the lounge, those players are going to be playing against each other. And that's where you can go ahead and have, discussion about the game type, and then you can actually decide whether you're going to enter into a tournament or you're just going to go off radar and play amongst yourselves and basically decide the rules of the match. And I've gotten this idea basically from many years of playing on the Internet Gaming Zone, and I really enjoyed that when you had a lobby where you could discuss with players about how they want to play the game, decide the rules, and then launch and play. It's pretty nice environment, and you don't have a lot of nasty matchmaking stuff being forced down your throat too. That's also a nice thing. So
that's ELO right there.
There's a time between when you hit the pre-launch button and then when you hit the launch button, and between that time, that's when a few things happen. So one of the things that we have in our game is the threat value system. So the threat value system basically means that if you're going up against a guy that has a higher threat value, there's a certain threshold. If he's hit that threshold, you're given a warning. You're told this guy has a higher threat value, and so if you play against him, and depending on the game type and what you choose, you could be a sorry guy by the end of the match. So you're being told that. Okay, so if you make that choice, that's cool. The next step is you enter into the gear bay. And so when you get into the gear bay, that's where all the customization happens. That's basically, you choose your gear, you can customize its loadout. During that time, if the guy has a higher threat value, we do go ahead, make some recommendations to help the player and say, hey, okay, there's equipment that's available, that may be able to assist you during your match. If you're interested in putting this loadout on your gear. And then from there, you can go ahead and click launch. And when both guys have launched, you get this timer that ticks, very similar to a real tournament. You get this timer to tick, the guy says go, and next thing you know, you guys are playing against each other. Then, for whatever reason, if you happen to think your gear is going to explode or you're going to die, you can eject during the match, and if you're able to find your way across the battlefield and back to the gear bay, you can go ahead and get in another one of your gears if you own another gear, and you can head back out with that gear and continue fighting against this guy. We're making it really, really difficult for the pilots. Right now, the pilots can't even carry any sort of weapons on them. So, if you happen to be sneaking across the battlefield and this guy's coming along in a gear, he could squat you. So you don't want that. So we basically put a number of things in our in which the pilots can hide, like bunkers and stuff like that, to find their way back, if so they choose to do that. And we find that's a really exciting and interesting way to play the game. And it's not like Titanfall at all, where the pilots are extremely equipped in terms of military weapons and jetpacks and stuff like that. We're not going for that type of feel at all. We want you to get back to the gear bay and get in another gear and get back out in the match, if you so choose. And after that, then the pilots can actually choose to head back to the lounge from the gear bay, and then they can go ahead and sit down in the lounge and, of course, decide whether they're going to go back out and do another match or, get more people involved or, go your separate way or whatever. So it's a really fun and interactive experience that unfortunately we didn't really explain very well during Kickstarter, and a lot of to sort of take it back to your original question, listening to the community, one of the things that we got from the community was people were very interested in interacting with each other, and that interactive nature of the games back in the 90s. Kind of seems to have been lost a little bit, and they're actually asking for, a lounge area, the chat. They're asking for, the ability to be able to interact in and not just a 2D interactive atmosphere, but in a full 3D interactive atmosphere. And that's really the ultimate awesome that I can think of. This is something that, in the MechWarrior world, having that interactive Comstar and stuff like that is something that really, really I thought would have been awesome in the next gen mech games, but unfortunately that's not something that we got. Having that ability to be able to do that keeps players put, and that, you don't have to jump, to chat windows and other programs and anything. It's fully immersive, and that's what we're really shooting for with this game is full on immersion.
Okay, so basically, to kind of summarize it, you're planning to basically take the community input and then, I guess, kind of elaborate on other things that might help alleviate those concerns. I think that was kind of the gist of what I was getting at, because there's a lot of concerns with other games, obviously, and people bring them up, but they either get ignored or the question gets deflected. Is that basically what you guys had planned for how you're addressing community input?
In terms of community input, so we're listening to our backers first and foremost, because we feel that those are the people that have, they have backed us, they have shown support in the beginning, they've helped lay the foundation for us to get started. We're working right now with a tenth of our budget for this game at the moment, and any feedback that comes in, we listen to, we evaluate it. We're not necessarily going to take everybody's suggestions. I mean, some people have really, really, really crazy ideas about what their expectations are for the game, that unfortunately we can't fulfill, or just aren't feasible at the time or whatever. But for the most part, we're your.com website that basically is going to allow the player to be able to go into their profile and send us direct information. One of the things that Stompybot Productions is actually working on right now is the development of an application, and this is for our current project, which is Heavy Gear, as well as a number of other projects, including for a number of other different studios that are interested in this. Basically, what we found is that there needs to be an application developed for the independent cultural industry that allows the players to be able to easily communicate to the developers, removed of all this noise. The forums, for instance. I mean, we've seen this on so many different games where players come on the forums and offer this really great feedback, and it just seems to get completely ignored by developers. And
Never seen that happen before.
Well, yeah. So what we're doing
It's a novelty.
What we're doing is we've taken a look at a number of different applications that are out there, like help desk type software and Salesforce software, and we basically come up with an idea where we can actually get this into our pipeline, this information, and actually use it during our development cycle, because that's what we did with MechWarrior 4. We had a huge beta testing team. I don't know, maybe one of you guys are on it. And we basically provided a system. It was a little bit convoluted back then because the technology was somebody else's, but we provided a system for everybody to be able to continue to provide feedback. And by that feedback loop, we were able to actually accomplish things faster because we were getting information in a way that we needed it. And I'll tell you right now, between phone calls, emails, forum posts on news websites, it gets really hard and costly to keep track of this information. So we're going to give our entire player base a place where they can go and give us valuable feedback and we'll communicate directly to them one-on-one, and we'll get that information into our pipeline and use it to the best of our ability. And we're basically cutting out all the white noise because we don't have time for it. We're independent. We're a small team, and we can't possibly chase all the things that everybody wants in the entire interweb. It's just not possible.
So basically, a more formal version of the suggestion box, I guess, the best way to put it.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely how we're going to go about it.
That sounds like a really good plan. I know we used, I think it was Salesforce that we used when I was at EA, when people would bring things up to us and we'd have repeated issues that we could kind of log them all in there. We'd be able to tell exactly what game it was, what the issue was related to, and what the, basically, who needed to address it. And that would all get sent off to the studios on a regular basis. So it's a really good system, and it sounds a lot more formal, and I think that formality is going to help out a lot because this way, people who have actual serious issues will have a way to actually submit it in a way that's conducive to getting those issues addressed as quickly as possible, and help you prioritize what needs to be fixed.
I'll tell you that the thing about the reason why I mentioned Salesforce is because the developers of Salesforce were Radeon 6, who are actually in St. John here, and their company is actually uptown. They've sold it since. I forget who they sold it to, but they had a buyout deal with it. And I've heard quite a lot about that software, and I know a lot of companies use Salesforce. And the one thing that bothers me about it, though, is that it's not very independent friendly. Like, you have to have a lot of money to license it, and it comes with a bit of a help desk feel to it. And what we're building is something that we think is a little bit more independent friendly.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming in today, Vince. As always, we do appreciate you guys coming on the cast to talk to us. John, great hearing from you guys again. We really appreciate y'all taking the time to come out and talk to us. I think it's a mutually beneficial thing. We love hearing about it. We love hanging out with you guys, and y'all get to tell the world a little bit more about Heavy Gear Assault. So that has been Concast for today, Saturday, July 13th. So you stay classy, Intersphere.